In this video I will show you one of my craziest game I played in Grunfeld Defence. Grunfeld Defence is a very rich and very fascinating opening, mostly for players who like complicated, dynamic and aggressive play. For a reason, one of the top grandmasters who plays Grunfeld Defence is Maxime Vacher-Lagrave, who is a very attacking and aggressive player. So let's straight into the game. The game was played on lichess. I played with black against opponent who was 2200 rated. And Grunfeld Defense is an opening when you give up a center a little bit at the beginning. You intend to fianchet to your bishop and then you play d5. You counter attack the center. White takes, knight takes, e4, takes on c3, bc3. And this is a very typical structure in Grunfeld Defense. White has strong center, strong pawn center, and your role as a black is to attack the center and undermine it. And the whole strategic play builds around those ideas that you want to attack this center. Bishop g7, you develop bishop. Bishop e3, it's one of many options here. You play c5, and of course white can't take because you take on c3 and then you take a rook. So you attack, I attack pawn center, queen d2, also one of possibilities, queen a5. I play this move because I don't want to see a move d5, by which white would avoid some problems with tension in the center. Pawn on d5 would be strong. It also wouldn't be so easy to attack. So I play queen a5. So if white plays d5, I take on c3. So white can't play like that. Bishop c4, it's a rare move. Usually white plays knight f3 here, black plays knight c6 to put more pressure on the center, and you usually see a move like rook b1, a6, rook c1, and then you go into ending by taking on d4, exchanging on d2, and short castle. Bishop c4 is an uncommon move. I played knight c6, and now very bad move from white side, king e2. It has no sense in my opinion to play like that. You are just losing a pawn, and yeah, the better move was, for example, knight f3. So king e2, it's a blunder. I took on d4, queen d2, king d2, knight d4, and I'm pawn up. Now white can't develop knight on g1 because whenever he goes, for example e2, I just take and then I take on a1, so white would be lost. That's why white has to lose some time on rook b1, which is also a useful move because white has open b file and now they attack my b7 pawn. Castle, knight e2, and now is a moment when it seems like you should take on e2, it's okay, but it's better to go back with your knight, because if you took, white king would take it, and white doesn't have any problems right now, despite the fact that they are pawn down. They will just enter this rook into the game, and we'll have some decent play. Now when I go back with my knight on c6, king is still on d2, there is a threat of rook d8 and king has to go either on c5, which is open, or on e1 blocking this rook. And now there is a question, what should white do with those pieces right now? Knight f4, I played knight e5. A little bit better move was just rook d8, but knight e5 is just okay. Bishop d5, rook d8, king e2, and now comes the moment when I have a great move. I could have played a great move and it would be probably one of my greatest game if I played like that. So stop a video, think for a moment. It's not an easy move to spot. So what do we see? Well, our pawn on b6 is under double attack and we can't really protect it. In the game I played g5 because now knight has to go on h3, which is a bad square for the knight. If it goes on h5, I go bishop g4 with double attack on king and knight. It can go on d3 because I take it, king takes, and e6, bishop is gone on d5. But there was a better move than g5. The better move was b6. And now you are sacrificing your rook on a8, which looks crazy. This move looks crazy, but it was the best move. If white takes this rook, then look at this king. It is in the center, and my knight blocks both squares for him. Also, let's do it like that. This square is taken. This whole line is blocked by rook, and after bishop a6 I attack f3, f1, d1, d2, d3. So the only square king can go is e1. Then I play knight f3. White has to take this pawn, this knight. There is no other option. And now I'm rook and piece down, but I play bishop c3. So you can see how active all my pieces are. And despite the fact that I'm down with material, now I'm regaining all of it, and I will at the end have more material. Bishop d2 is the only move. Bishop d2, king d1, bishop f4 with check. And after king goes on c2, for example, I take on a8, and I have two bishops and pawn for a rook, which is one position for me. So there was such a possibility. I didn't play it. I played g5. After knight h3, I played h6 with an idea to close this knight. This knight doesn't have any squares to go right now. It can't go on f4, can't go on g5. The only square is g1, but it's very weak square for this knight because it blocks rook. White took on b7, and now still there is a similar idea, similar to b6, bishop e6. So I spotted this idea right here. After bishop a8, which was in the game, I played bishop c4. Now the only move was king e1, and after knight d3, look how excellent this knight right here is. It's very active. It attacks very important squares in white's position. And now king has to go on d5, because if it goes on f1, then I go knight c1, and after king e1 there is check on c3. The only move is bishop d2, bishop d2. After king d1 I play g4, and now knight has to go on g1. I go bishop g5, king e1, knight d3, and after king f1 or e2 I just take on a8, and my position is won. On the other hand, after king g1 right now there is checkmate on d1. He played king d2, and now I made a fatal mistake. I played g4 because I thought that after knight goes on f4 I just take it with a check. If it goes on g1 I take on f2 and then take the rook because there is check again, but I missed a very strong move. White plays bishop d5, my opponent is rook up, so it can like ignore this threat and now threaten to take my bishop. And actually now position is lost. I should have played knight e5 right now. Bishop is pinned, so he can't take on c4, he has to escape with knight, and then I play e6. I regain some material, I take his piece and I'm exchanged down with some chances to draw this position. But I took it on d5. to be honest, during the game I forgot that I'm rook down, that I don't have so much material. I just took on d5. e d5, rook d5, now king e2, so there is no discovered check. I took on h3, gh3, and now my position is lost. I'm exchanged down. There are a lot of open lines for rooks, which is important for white in terms of realizing this exchange advantage. And also my pawn on a7 is weak, my pawn on e7 can be attacked, so there is almost no hope in this position. Rook b7 was played, a5, rook e7, rook b5, intending rook b2. Now rook d1, knight c4, bishop d4. White wants to exchange this bishop. If I took bishop, rook would take, bishop, rook d2, b2, and after king f3, my knight is attacked. I can't take this pawn, and soon rook will attack my king. I played bishop f8, which was a fatal mistake because of rook g1, king h7, rook f7. So I lost this game. I made a mistake. Nevertheless, it was a very interesting game. An idea of b6 was very extraordinary, and I haven't met such an idea during my chess career playing Grunfeld Defence. And it shows you how much possibilities lies in Grunfeld Defence in this opening. So that's it. Thanks for watching. Remember to download my free ebook. It's called 11 Killers of Your Progress. One of the lessons there is that you should solve a lot of tactics. So when you have a won position, you don't miss any possibility or threat coming from your opponent, which I did in this position. I didn't see bishop d5, and because of that I didn't want this position. So I'm also learning this stuff all the time, and I should also solve tactics, because no matter what's your chess level, tactics are always very, very important. So thanks for watching, and see you next time.